Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining another LeadSquared webinar. You see me all the time. I see you at every webinar rather. So thank you so much again for joining this session. We are specifically discussing collections and digitizing collections to make it efficient and cost effective. So if you're in for that, this session is a treat. We've got a great panel. Before we move to the panel, let me just take you through some of the things that we will be discussing. Overall in the session, we will talk about the hidden costs of servicing, adapting to the changes to ensure customer centricity. We will also talk about the role and benefits of technology and leveraging the power of automation. So with that, if I could please have a couple of lines from our speakers. Let me just tell you who they are. So we have Mr. Andrew Day, who is the Global Chief Data Officer at Pepper Global. We have Mr. Prashant K, who is the VP International Business at Ozonetel. And we have Mr. Prashant Singh, who is the Chief Operating Officer at LeadSquared. So Andrew, let's go with you. If you could please share a few lines about yourselves. Where are you taking this session from? What could you tell us about yourself?
Okay, great. Well, nice to see or hear everybody. Firstly, I have to apologise. My camera in front of me failed this morning, so I'm looking at a screen here and a camera over there. So my apologies. So I'm Andrew Day. I'm the Group Chief Data Officer for Pepper. I joined the business 3 years ago. My background has been really a lifetime in the world of data and analytics, machine learning and AI. I kind of started on the data journey before data was cool and technology was there to turn data into insights and action. And my role at Pepper is to really make sure we're exploiting the best of tech and data to really power our businesses. I'll talk a little bit more about our businesses as we go through the session, but that's the background. I'm relatively new to financial services. This is my first job in the financial services sphere. I was previously Chief Data Officer at Sainsbury's, which is arguably the first or second biggest grocery retailer in the UK. I was part of the exec team at News Corp and spent 12 years, maybe 14 years in mobile telco, most recently as the Chief Data Officer for O2 in the UK.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Glad to have you here. With that, let's move to Prashant K. So, of course, he's from Ozonetel, and Ozonetel is a partner with us in this session. So, thank you so much for joining us, Prashant. What could we learn from you today? Please tell us a little bit about yourself on Ozonetel.
Yeah, hi all, Prashant here. So, I've been with Ozonetel for about 10 years now. Prior to that, I was not in the contact center industry. But yeah, I can say that I am an expert in this industry now. Given that this product was built along with me and the tech team. So I was part of the team which was building the product. I've done various roles, including product management. Initial days of sales in India was done by me. After that, it was taken over by the proper sales teams. I did support delivery. I headed those teams for Ozonetel. And now I'm back into sales. I'm handling the North American region now. I'm trying to build the business in USA right now.
Awesome. So I see two people here who have switched industries midway. Is that the same for you, Prashant? Let's hear it from you. So he is from LeadSquared and has hosted several sessions for us, the Chief Operating Officer here. So Prashant, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Hi all. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Shibani, thank you for setting this up. So I'm Prashant Singh. I'm co-founder and Chief Operating Officer of LeadSquared. So to answer your question, Shibani, I have been in tech industry for my entire life. Have been an entrepreneur for most of my life. Started. So I'm a graduate of IIT Delhi. Worked as a developer, a programmer early in my career. But very early decided to start my own company just after a couple of years of industry experience. And that was a gamble and it paid off. So the current set of co-founders of LeadSquared were co-founder of a company called Proteans back in 2003. And we grew that company to a very respectable size, and that was acquired by Symphony Services, which became Harman, which is part of Samsung now. And that business is still existing with Samsung. So I'm very proud of that, what we built, and that's still adding value to our customers. after that, co-founded LeadSquared. So in a way, there is a switch from services to product. Proteans was a services company. LeadSquared is a pure product company. So there is a significant difference between product DNA and services DNA, which we realize after starting LeadSquared. So yeah, so so in that way there is a switch, and so I take care of the entire post-sales delivery of inside LeadSquared. So the implementations, the customer success, the customer support, the renewals, all that is my responsibility. Yeah, so very happy to talk along Andrew and Prashant about how technology can really help automate the debt servicing or collection processes.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you. So lots to learn from the panel here. Let me just now hand it over to Prashant K to take us ahead.
Okay, thanks, Shivani. So even before we start the panel and let Andrew give out his exposure to the collections industry and their experience on how they've solved the issues. First of all, let's look at some stats. In fact, I believe these are optimistic stats when you look at the end 200 positive responses, because usually when you get to ops on outbound calls, dialing, trying to reach out customers, the positive responses vary between 2% to 10% anywhere. If you're lucky, if you're getting 8% positive responses in a day. And if you look at the stats, if you do about 2,500 dials, 1,000 connected calls is 40%. Even that's pretty high, especially when you're doing repeated calling. On day one, you might get 50-60% of connected calls, but consistently getting 40% over a period of time would mean that the business head, the ops guys who are running the dialer every day, they need to understand when to switch numbers, when to get local presence out there. So users see calls coming in from their local cities, so they pick the calls. So 40% to achieve that, it's pretty well sorted out process for the business. Otherwise, getting 40% day in, day out, that's pretty tough actually. While it sounds it's low, it's pretty tough to get on a daily outbound calling process. And when you further drill down the connected calls, actually 600 or 60% of it. But I see generally about it varies. It's not exactly 60. It varies between 40 to 80%. So I think they try to put the average of it. Usually, you would see that customers are busy. They ask you to call back, so they'll disconnect the call after hearing who you are. There will be wrong numbers. People have switched numbers, so you have to remove those numbers. All of that goes into that 60%. And of the 400 connects which are positive, where at least you've reached the right person, they would only 50% of that would usually respond positively and maybe give you a positive response on why they haven't paid or when they can make the payment. Okay, and rest of them would actually want to speak to somebody to change their schedule of payments, and so you wouldn't ideally be able to collect the debt then in those calls. So it's a pretty tough process to handle, and I think Andrew can throw more light on the day in, day out ops issues they face and how they're resolving it. But just from the outbound calling reachability point of view, yeah, even this is optimistic if you ask. And it's unless the business guys know their process in and out, this is pretty tough to achieve in a day-to-day operations role. So can we just go to the next slide, Shivani? Yeah,
So
Andy, over to you.
Yeah, maybe pick it up from there. I completely concur with your assessment that this is in a traditional sense a tough area of the market, and actually just thinking about your funnel there of customers to calls to inverted commas conversion. Actually, historically using traditional methods and a single channel, you'll be lucky in many markets, but in particular in India and Southeast Asia to see those sorts of numbers. I think they are, as you rightly point out, somewhat optimistic. So let me maybe just take a step back and introduce you to Pepper, and then I'll kind of get into the detail, because I would assume that some of you don't know Pepper. We are a business that has pretty much global reach. We have 12 business units across the globe, from Australia to Europe, and a number of places in between. And we do two things as an organization. Firstly, we are a...
Andrew, you're on mute.
Gosh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm desperately sorry. So let me start again then. So I was just agreeing with your synopsis of the collections world, and actually I think maybe as you described, maybe a little bit optimistic in terms of some of the numbers we see in a number of jurisdictions. From the number of customers or loans that we manage on behalf of investors, through to the number of successful calls, and off the back of that conversion, actually the numbers can be a lot smaller than that, especially in a traditionally managed business where you have a call center and a single channel of communicating with customers. So maybe before we get into the detail, I'll maybe introduce Pepper to you all. For those of you that don't know, we are a business with pretty much global reach. We operate in 12 countries across 12 companies across 11 jurisdictions, from Australia through to Europe, and pretty much everywhere in between. And we do two things as an organization. The first is we are a lender, so we lend across a variety of different asset classes, including mortgages. So we're the biggest non-bank, most well-known non-bank lender in the mortgage market in Australia. We are the biggest second charge mortgage provider in the UK, and we lend across other asset classes in other jurisdictions: personal loans, asset finance, 2- and 4-wheelers, and so on. So that's one half of our business. The other half of our business is working with organisations that disperse loans or own non-performing loan books to service those loan books. So we act as the agent for a number of brands, both servicing performing and non-performing loan books, again across a variety of jurisdictions. We have about 2 million customers. We manage around $68 billion of assets on behalf of our customers and ourselves, and we employ about just shy of 4,000 people around the globe. We entered the Indian market in December of 2019, perfectly timed, just ahead of a global pandemic, which was meant that 2020 was an interesting year for both creating a business and trying to scale a business. But I'm delighted to say that we were successful in that, and in no small part through to the relationships we have with organisations like Ozonetel and LeadSquared. Our Indian business, just to give you some sense of scale there, it's been operating for a little over 18 months in very trying circumstances, but we make about 75,000 calls per month. We currently have about 60 agents employed across 2 locations, one in Vellore in the south and a second in Mumbai. And we have we've attracted organisations investing with us to the tune of assets under management currently standing at about 850 crore. So not a small business, but a business that's growing very rapidly. Our USP, I think, in all of this is how we go about applying great tech, great analytics, and great data to deliver a great customer experience. And I think typically in the world of servicing and debt recovery, people quite often forget that there's a customer at the end of the telephone line or the end of a loan record. And I think one of the things that we hold dear to ourselves is that notion of being very customer centric and very mindful that our job isn't to metaphorically beat people up for money, but to collect money in a way that hopefully rehabilitates them, their credit score, and enables them to, if they've fallen into a degree of arrears, to re-enter the financial market. And I think that plays very well with markets like India in particular, where financial inclusion is such a big challenge. And so when people have entered the financial markets, for whatever reason, fallen into a degree of indebtedness, our role is really to try and help them back onto the ladder so they can re-enter those markets. So let me just kind of touch on the debt recovery pyramid that's on the slide here, which is really about how we manage our business. And I think it's worth saying that we do that with the help of Ozonetel and LeadSquared and a number of other technologies and capabilities, and with a really strong data and tech team internally. So at the bottom of the pyramid is this notion of managing the automation and recovery pipeline. And some of the things that are really important here, you can see listed here. How do you integrate your platform with other platforms? How do you categorize borrowers according to how well they might engage with you? And off the back of that, how do you prioritize your caseload? Bearing in mind the thing that most people are limited by is the number of bums on seats or feet on the street that actually can carry out these activities. Secondly, kind of next step up from that then is how you apply advanced analytics. And this is something that is clearly dear to my heart, having been the Chief Data Officer of Pepper for 3 years and had a lifetime in the world of advanced analytics and data analytics. So how do you track performance? How do you manage and measure customers through predictive analytics? How do you really drive efficiency and efficacy in your collection processes and your customer management processes using analytics? And then ultimately, how do you make that all happen in an operation to drive what ultimately falls at the top of the pyramid, and that is recovery. And across all of that, I think the thing that is absolutely apparent is that it's not a simple process, right? So customers are different. The state of their personal circumstances are always different. The nature of the loans they have taken out is quite often different. And so that business by definition has complexity in it. And complexity means cost, and cost means you have to work harder and harder to optimize what you're doing. So that's kind of the background. I think I'm going to hand it back over for a second to Prashant to talk about the next slide, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. And like you and Prashant earlier described, collection. It's not a very simple process, right? I mean, it's a sophisticated multi-step process. And at every step, it can go either ways, right? It can go forward or backward or sideways, right? So without putting systems in place, it becomes very challenging to have an efficient and result-oriented collection or debt servicing setup. So there are some data points on this slide which talk about overall digital adoption in the lending space, and collection being one process as part of the overall lending ecosystem within the country and globally. The data points are that most of the people prefer digital way of lending, right? When the lending is going digital, the collection cannot or debt servicing cannot fall behind, right? I mean, in order to collect the rightful money from the borrower, and in a way which makes more human, like Andrew was alluding to, and rather than having an aggressive process, right? It should be done in a way which kind of brings back the borrower in the financial ecosystem, making part of the financial inclusion. That requires software systems, technology, and automation to be in place, right? There is no other way. The physical combined with digital is the only way. In fact, it will go more and more towards the direction of digital than physical. That is the only way that will make it successful and human. So from that perspective, adopting technologies like LeadSquared and Ozonetel and other technologies that Pepper Group is using, that's absolutely important for all the lenders and their partners who do the debt servicing. It's absolutely important to for them to adopt them. So Shivani, maybe you can move to next slide. I had a couple of just questions for Andrew. I mean, if you do you think debt servicing, I mean, the collection is it like a sales process? I mean, how similarity would you think there are any differences? I mean, it is like a sales process, I would assume. Do you see any differences? That's one. Second is with your global experience. I mean, is the collection process in India, is it like different from other geographies? Do you see any significant differences, or is it like is it very similar in nature and shape?
Yeah. So let me answer the first question around the sales process. I think ultimately the answer to that is yes. What are you trying to do when you're selling? You are trying to build a relationship with the customer, so ultimately they transact with you. And collections and servicing is exactly about doing that. Finding a way to get the customer into a position where they are, willing and comfortable to part with their money, whether that's buying a service or paying back a loan. I think that the process is pretty similar, and actually that in and of itself plays to exactly what you've described, and that is there isn't a one size fits all. Every customer has a different set of requirements, a different personal circumstance, and I always remember 30 years ago my father-in-law saying to me that anybody in sales should recognize they're born with 2 ears and 1 mouth, and they should use them in that proportion, right? And so listening to the customer and working out how you can engage with the customer in a way that's meaningful for them is exactly what we try to do as a business. And then differences between India and other jurisdictions. Well, I think we service and collect on a variety of different asset classes around the globe, at a varying states of distress. So we have a big business in Europe that services mortgages that are performing. So we literally act as the white label servicer for a number of mortgage providers in the UK and across Europe, and those situations are clearly very different. And actually, when you're talking about asset-backed loans, the process tends to be different. The customer has something intrinsically valuable to them that they want to keep hold of, and so if that in a non-performing world, you work with the customer to find out how you can find a repayment program that suits them. And that notion of rehabilitation, I think, is really important. In other jurisdictions, and I particularly refer to kind of India and Indonesia, where we're active from a consumer lending perspective. The process, I think, the fundamental tenets of the process are still the same, and that is, work with the customer to reach a resolution that is good for the customer and good for the loan owner. But where you have unsecured loans, so education loans, for an example, then quite often you might be looking for a one-time settlement from the customer as opposed to creating a payment plan. So there are asset class differences, but I think that the world over, the process is largely the same, and I think that plays really into our purpose as a business. We have a brand strapline which is about helping people succeed. And whilst it's very easy to think about collections and debt recovery being a really tough and quite challenging environment, actually the position we take is very, very different. It is absolutely about helping people succeed. It's about how we rehabilitate customers and how we work with customers to put them back on the right track.
Yeah, I like that approach. I think I I like the name of your company. I think it's, if I'm not wrong, it's called Paper India Resolution Private Limited, right? So
that's right. Yeah,
it's actually resolution. It's not collection or debt recovery, right? I mean, you are resolving in a way which works for the customer and the loan owner. I think. Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. And we use all sorts of smarts, from technology through to data to help us in that process. Signals from customers that enable us to understand their personal situation, as well as the transactions we have with them, through speech analytics and understanding the process, where they are in the collection process. All that insight and information drives the outcomes.
Sure.
So I'll just talk a little bit about this. I won't dive into the slide too much because there's lots of words here, but I think it's maybe worth me talking about our approach to technology and how we support our servicing operations from a technology and data perspective. Typically, when we go into a new market, what we look for is existing technologies that can help us get off the ground quickly. And that's super important, and technologies that enable us to bring our IP, which is really the process and the way of executing a collection customer management strategy to the market as quickly as possible. We make very clear decisions about where we insource and outsource. So where we think we're creating new IP, we will build ourselves. And where there is technologies that enable us to rapidly deploy our IP into a new situation, whether that's a new country or a new asset class or a new business, we look to partner with organizations that can help us. And we do that in a way that plays to kind of our core tenants from a technology perspective. And they really are, cloud first. Can we deploy this on the cloud, which makes it, wholly portable and malleable, almost, it's kind of software as a service model. How scalable it is. We have big aspirations for our Indian business to turn that into a business the same size and scale as our European servicing business. And with 1 billion people in a single country, we think that's wholly possible. We need to be able to deploy our capabilities in a multi-channel environment. I think traditionally, collections in the traditional sense has been done through one of two ways, feet on the street or telephone calls. And I think, customers and consumers are now smarter than that, and expect to work with companies in a multi-channel way, and they should be able to choose how they interact with us rather than us forcing them to interact with us in a particular way. How well you can integrate technologies is really important to us. The Ozonetel platform and the LeadSquared platform don't fulfill all of our technical requirements. Clearly, we have other parts of the tech stack that we need to use, and so integration is really important. And last but not least, recognizing that we are in a startup situation in India, although we're now not a startup. When we started off, finding a supplier that has a licensing model that works with us and can scale with us is really important. And I think hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? But if we wind back the clock to when we made the decisions about the technologies we wanted to use in India, little did we know that 3 months later we would be facing into a global pandemic, where some of those capabilities, especially around portability and mobility of our agents, would become not a nice to have. Will become absolutely critical to our survival as a business. And I'm delighted that all of our technologies that support our business have been able to be used by our workforce from home in a mobile context, without any significant change to the way we operate as a business. And interestingly, off the back of that, actually, we think that our collections and servicing business in India will increasingly be not office-based. We'll have a very small head office function, but all of our operations will be run by people working from home or coming to the office for maybe 1 or 2 days a week. And so making the decisions around Ozonetel and LeadSquared, they were the things that we considered. Hopefully that makes some sort of sense. Maybe we can jump on to the next slide. So, and this feels like a bit of a sales slide. I'm not the salesperson. There's other guys on the call here on the webinar that can give you the sales pitch. But I think, the 5 requirements here are the tip of the iceberg. So how do we manage operations from a single platform? How can we get visibility into the activities across the life cycle of the customer? How can we have a consolidated view, not just for senior management, but for the entire business? I'll talk about that in a second. Driving productivity, absolutely critical. Most businesses that are managing servicing contracts only scale by having more people, and that feels like a very outdated business model. So driving productivity and efficiency is absolutely critical. And how do we have a tool which is easy to use, not just for the call center guys, but for the executives in the call centers? How can it change and grow with us as our requirements change and grow? And I think clearly I wouldn't be here today if the solutions across the 2 platforms that we're talking about today didn't fulfill those requirements. And maybe I'll dive into a little bit of detail in the next few slides. So maybe we can move on to the next slide. So I like this slide because it's so inaccurate. This would suggest that the collections process is a nice linear process where every customer behaves in exactly the same way, and you start at A and end up at Z, and you tick every letter in between. But we are, globally, but also in India, managing tens of thousands of customers, and no 2 situations are the same. And so digitizing the collections process means being able to cope with complexity. And complexity means that no 2 customers go through the same process. So you start off with a record of a loan. You might have to try and find out who the customer is, where they live, how to contact them. You then might have a conversation with them. They may or may not agree to pay some money or restructure their loan. Off the back of that, they may or may not follow through with their actions. And so you end up with, for every 1,000 customers, you probably have 500 different customer journeys. And so digitizing the collections process to the point of this slide is something that we have to absolutely face into. So we have the bare bones of what we think of the collections process is, but the systems and capabilities need to be able to cope with that complexity. Re-engaging with customers, starting at A, ending, getting to C, going back to B, jumping to Z, ending up at Y, and so on. And I think that process is only possible if you have a CRM environment that can cope with that sort of complexity and deliver that complexity without having to plan every single customer journey. If we move on to the next slide, ensuring customer centricity, well, you've probably got a sense that this is a core part of our DNA, and tracking progress at a customer level is something which is really really important. What I personally liked about the LeadSquared system when we first engaged with LeadSquared is clearly the ability to customize the journey is the kind of base stakes. Being able to present that in a really crisp way for agents to be able to very quickly get a handle of what the customer situation is important. So crisp UI, and the fact that as you track progress through a customer journey and rejig the customer approach, you have at your fingertips pretty much a full 360 view of the customer, and that means you can have joined up, sensible, informed conversations with customers, which is the holy grail in building a customer-centric business. If we go on to number 3, metrics to track progress, management information is really key. Okay, and I think being able to create dashboards that enable not just the senior managers, but the guys that are running the operation, and indeed the individual agents, to understand how well the operation is performing and how well they're performing, is part and parcel of our standard mode of operation. And that's really about having a holistic, joined up view of what's happening in the business. I think it's fair to say that we don't use the LeadSquared platform for all of our reporting requirements. We use it to report on the CRM stuff, but we do integrate the data from here into a wider set of dashboards that we publish. And those dashboards and the data from the LeadSquared platform, the Ozonetel platform, are published literally up to our group chief exec. So we have a single version of the truth that runs top to bottom of our organization. So if you draw a line from an agent sat at home in Vellore making a call, you'll be able to track those data from that individual agent right through to the chief exec's dashboard for our group chief exec who sits in Singapore. And I think that's really powerful as a capability.
So Andrew, how do you measure agent productivity? Is it like number of collections done? I mean, that would be a top metric, or the amount of collection, or number of calls made, or it's some sort of combination of this.
Yeah, so it's we have some what I describe as reasonably kind of day one measures, which are quite crude. So how many calls, what's your caseload, how many people did you move into promise to pay, and therefore off the back of that the collections ratio, and that's where we started. Increasingly, what we're trying to do is to think about differences in situations for customers, and how that affects our ability to collect. So to my point about two customers being the same, an agent who has been assigned a case that is really difficult to collect because the customer is difficult to track down, or is aggressive on the phone, or has some particular behaviors, or characteristics to his personal situation, which makes him, a more difficult loan to manage. Then rewarding our agents for making progress in those cases is as worthy as just the headline numbers around, volume metrics and value metrics. But I think it's fair to say, we look for efficiency around ultimately the outcomes that our upstream customers, the banks, non-banks, funds, and fintechs are interested in, and that is, of a book, what percentage of loans and what value of the outstanding amounts of AUM have you managed to collect. But there's nuance in there, I think, and increasingly we'll see that there's nuance over time. In other jurisdictions, it might be that collecting recovering an auto loan is easier or harder than recovering an unsecured loan, and we need to make sure that we're mindful of that when we're measuring performance of agents.
Okay.
Hopefully that makes sense. And then if we move on to the next slide, my last slide, you'll probably be glad to hear. How do you improve call center productivity? Well, I mean, the platforms enable us to link agents to customers and loan types, and that's kind of step one. Really importantly to me, and especially given my background in the world of machine learning and artificial intelligence, is how you can then start to improve productivity through applying all the data you have back into the customer processes. And so, we see improving call center productivity as really multifaceted. So there is clearly making sure that people, that our agents are active when they're supposed to be active, but also understanding things like, what time of day do which type of customers tend to answer the phone or respond to WhatsApp. Which customers should you contact through which channel at what time? which agents best manage what type of customers. And so we're providing, the data that we get out of the various systems provides us with the raw inputs into our machine learning models that enable us to really optimize the call center and collections productivity. And that's really important to us because without those smarts, without wrapping back the learnings from the outcomes that we have across the course of the last 12 months, then we'll never become more efficient, and all we'll end up being is a Me Too collections or servicing agent. And we've found right across the globe, the smarter you use data to drive your operations and to feed into your CRM, the better outcomes you deliver. And better outcomes is actually, there are three stakeholder groups in our world. There is the customer who owns the loan, or has the degree of indebtedness. There is the upstream client who is the investor, and that might be a bank or a fintech or a non-bank, as I've said. And then there's our internal stakeholders, and we want our people to be successful, and we want to be able to equip them with the tools and technologies that enable them to be successful. And I think, look, I think we've chosen very well in India. We've been delighted with the platforms that we've put in there, and our business, albeit through a very difficult period for the economy and people in India, has flourished as a result of both the resilience and focus of our management and our people in India, and the capabilities we've put at their fingertips to make them successful. I think I'll hand it back over to you, Prashant, now.
Sure. Yeah, Shibani. Yeah, all right. Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing your experience around automating the collection or debt servicing process using technologies like LeadSquared and Ozonetel. So, I mean, what I gather from you, and what I understand about through our own experience of working with several customers in the space. So it's a high velocity, high volume, multi-step, sophisticated sales process, right? Which can, like we were discussing earlier, which can move, forward, backward, or sideways at any step, right? No two situations are different, like Andrew you said, right? So different borrowers will have different kind of journeys, So
yeah.
Engagement, again, picking from what Andrew said, engagement in a multi-channel way is important. So telephone is not the only mechanism to reach out to the borrower. There are mechanisms like SMS, email, WhatsApp, or messaging platforms available today, which can potentially be utilized to reach out to the borrower. Also, allocating the right debt servicing officer or agent is important, right? I mean, if a borrower is can speak only Tamil language, then you need to assign an agent who can speak that language, right? I mean, that agent needs to understand the language and the culture of the borrower in order to be productive, and needs to have access to the history of the previous engagement and conversation when he or she is talking to the borrower. Also, to make agent super productive, it's important to organize the work. It's important to tell the agent which borrowers to call to and when to call to. So what is the best time to call, and which are the borrowers who are most likely to confirm the promise to pay, right? Or who are most likely to pay. So so that's an important problem statement. I think, and given that the process can move in either direction, it's a dynamic process. The dynamic prioritization is important, right? The prioritization needs to happen in real time. It cannot be a static rule-based prioritization. With every step, the data which is coming in, that needs to be fed into the system, and the prioritization logic needs to work again to figure out to whom to reach out and when to reach out. And of course, getting visibility in the work happening, in the performance of the agents, in the overall business metric in real time is absolutely important. So these are some of the salient features of the debt servicing process that I could gather from our discussion and by our experience of working with other customers. Now, LeadSquared is a fairly robust and mature platform to automate a lot of these processes. Of course, the telephony, the communication piece is being handled by our partner Ozonetel, but LeadSquared plays a very important role of being a CRM for companies like Pepper Global. So we offer a full suite of features which can be utilized to cater to different parts of the borrower journey. So whether it's borrower management, which can include integration with getting the data about the borrowers through our API integration, categorizing the borrowers based on their attributes, or having a customer 360-degree view of customer, which is having all the engagement data, or managing communication through by integrating with partners like Ozonetel, doing dynamic prioritization, allocating the right set of calls or borrower leads to the agents, creating different kind of journeys for different types of borrowers, or providing the data through our native reporting mechanism, or exposing the data to a third-party platform like Power BI, where analytics can be done. So all those capabilities are available in LeadSquared to provide a full full spectrum of features to create an efficient and effective collection process. So I think Paper Global has been using it pretty effectively, and and I hope that with the kind of platform that we offer, we can help other the lending partners, the collection partners in the ecosystem who can utilize LeadSquared platform to automate their collection journeys. So that's what I would want to see on the slide. Shibani, you can move to the next one. I think Prashant, this is for you.
Yeah. So while we've talked about how the collections process has been run by Pepper, and how Ozonetel and LeadSquared have empowered them to run this, what we try to do here is try and bring it down to the basic level on the automation piece in the call center industry. This is more generic in nature, where we're talking about there are manual tasks, there are redundant tasks, and there are a lot of time-consuming tasks which happen in the outbound calling industry. So these are some of the tasks you would ideally want to automate. Like if you take redundant tasks, usually these are payment reminders. So there's no need for an agent to be available. You could simply use an IVR dialer, which is integrated with the CRM. And then you just send the payment reminders as outbound calls. And you can have fallback plans. So if users don't pick the call twice or thrice after your retries, maybe you switch to a different channel like WhatsApp or SMS and send them the payment reminder there. Because usually a call is usually the best way to assure that the user has actually listened to your reminder, and he's actually maybe you can have a press one if you confirm payment, okay, something like that. So you can also get a confirmation back from the user directly then and there in real time. Those are the redundant tasks which you can automate. Well, time-consuming tasks are what is actually the collections process, where you have physical agents, and especially when you look at it from the contact center cost point of view, each agent is a cost center because there's a physical desk, you're paying the salary, the cost to company is a lot more. And optimizing that agent to actually take calls which are actually connected and customer is interested, that's more important. So that way, even the agent's life becomes easy, and they're not just listening to voicemails or not getting the customers who don't have time to speak right now. So those are the time-consuming tasks which can be automated. probably a simple appointment bot or a confirmation bot, which just asks the customer, is it the right time to speak, and then connects to an agent. But collections industry itself is complicated, so it depends on the persona type also, I believe. So that's something which has to be tried and see if it succeeds with a particular persona in the collections industry. But yeah, that's what Ozonetel enables in terms of dialers. Okay. Shivani, can you move to the next slide? Yeah, thanks. So here, what we've tried to do is we've tried to give all types of options which are possible through the dialer, and try to segregate that into various categories. Like if you see selecting and dialing data, unanswered calls, busy tones. Usually these can be automated, so your agent utilization is much better. So the dialer can automate and eliminate those activities for the agent instead of agent having to listen to the other side with a busy tone or voicemails. Okay. Then scheduling retries, a manual import of data. Of course, API integrations are needed for that, which both LeadSquared and Ozonetel have. So that eliminates a lot of manual dependencies, and also it allows you to programmatically decide when you want to make those calls. So, like Andrew said, with their ML and AI capabilities, they must be running algorithms to say when these calls have to go out, or when these outreach, when the outreach has to happen on a different channel. That once the decision is made, there's no need for a human to interact, right? That's again bringing out efficiency through automation. So that's something both of us enable, and that's a key capability in the auto dialers we use today. Also, there are EMI remind something which is very popular in my mind is EMI reminders. So that's where the IVR automation comes in. So actually, even before the customer defaults on the payment, a lot of banks today send out EMI reminders on text, on calls. If you don't respond to the text, usually they also send out calls, especially if you are a defaulter in the previous month. Especially, I've seen this happening on auto loans and home loans. So those are things which you can automate. Try to be proactive in collections as well, so that customer doesn't miss the payment date at all. Okay. And using multiple channels to reach out to the customer, this could be working out for particular persona types, but like Andrew said, it depends on the customer actually and the customer behavior, because sometimes they might feel they're being followed up too actively, and they might take it negatively also. So that has using multiple channels to contact the same customer. That's something which the business owner has to decide which verticals, which type of collections processes would have to use it. Okay. And number masking is something which I see is very effective. In the US, we see this as local presence. India, we use local numbers of that city to call the users. That's really effective, because usually people have a tendency to pick calls from their locality. The other use case we've seen is people pick up calls if it's more if it looks like a mobile number. So usually we ask customers to dial calls from either Bangalore, Ahmedabad, Indore, which are like more like the mobile lookalike numbers, even though they are landline numbers. So usually that helps increase the pickup rates, and that's what we offer. So we started using speech analytics in a very interesting way. While the standard things like we're calling it as sentiment, but something interesting we're trying out with one of our pizza delivery clients in the US is intent of the customer in customer service. So while the customer is speaking to the agent, we are not just trying to see if it's a positive or negative response, but also if the customer is actually going to place the order. So usually if it's an inquiry call, we're trying to guess if the customer is ready to place the order and show that in the agent assist feature there. that when I look at it from a collections point of view, maybe when the agents, if you go back to the slide one data, right, that's like we have 200 positive responses where customers are saying they want to pay. So that would be a really interesting experiment where you actually use sentiment and decide whether the user has a real intent to pay, or he just said that on the phone, but he has no intent to pay at all. So that would be like a real killer speech analytics thing to use, which I could just think about right now when I was thinking through the entire process. Collection bots, I'm not so sure. It depends on the customer persona, like I said multiple times now. Some customer personas, it might be easy to use, but for some of the personas where the collection itself is very difficult, using a bot is a complete no. You would have to use physical agents definitely. So I would say while yeah, bots and technology is available, it's actually a decision which the business has to take sensibly on where a bot can be used and where you should actually use just the physical agents. So yeah, that's my view on how these features help or maybe do not help also in a negative sense in the outbound industry. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Prashant. Yeah, so this is, I think, the last slide, just to, capture, what the benefits that can, come by automating different processes. We spoke specifically about collection, but this slides captures, the larger BFSI processes, lending, insurance, and securities and other processes. We have customers in those spaces as well, and I think a combination of a CRM platform like LeadSquared and a telephony platform or a communication platform like Ozonetel can help in driving a lot of business benefits and improving a lot of metrics, right? So, for example, by integrating with the lead capture sources, for example, the social media sources like Facebook lead ad or Google lead ad, lead capture, can be improved, or number of leads that come, can be improved, or integrating with, borrower data sources like the data of, say, Paper India, right, or any other debt resolution, service provider. That data can inflow within a system like LeadSquared. So in case of say the larger lending and insurance space, there are typically opportunities for upsell and cross sell, which are which are possible. Those journeys are possible to be automated using automation platform of LeadSquared. The different kind of journeys can be created for upsell, cross sell for different categories of customers. If a company decides to offer a new product, a new sales process needs to be captured or automated, which is a combination of a step by step sales process in which communication is involved. Then again, platforms like LeadSquared and Ozonetel can help those kind of customers. So there are several benefits. I think just they largely fall into two categories. So one is improving sales or process effectiveness. Let's say process effectiveness if it's not a pure sales process, and the second is reduced operating costs. Right. Ultimately, the cost in case of, say, collection, cost of collection is also an important metric. Right. If the using technologies, the cost cannot be brought down, then it does not make sense. Eventually, the cost, apart from achieving effectiveness or doing more, the overall cost of operating at unit level should be reduced. So that also that benefit also is obtained by a customer of technologies like LeadSquared and Ozonetel. So I think that would be my take on this, and so with this, I think we can go to the question section. Feel free to post your questions in the questions panel, and we'll be happy to pick those. So Shibani, are there any questions? I mean, I think
So I noticed that Prashant K has been helping us answer questions there. Thank you so much. So in the meantime, then let me take up Gaurav's question there, because I think y'all can share your views on this. So Gaurav says, how are AI and ML reinventing the collections process?
Yeah, Andrew, you want to take that?
Yeah, of course. I think the answer to that is fundamentally machine learning and AI in its broadest context really are shaping everything from the way investors invest in NPLs right through to how you plan your customer strategies and how you manage your operations. And we've spent the last 3 years or 2.5 years that I've been at Pepper really focusing on how we can establish data and analytics driven businesses from the get-go. And it those capabilities are delivering fantastic outcomes for upstream and downstream customers, so clients and customers. And it's fundamental to our DNA. I think the thing that's tough there is how you go about building those capabilities, because the data that typically exists within a loan and within an operation isn't enough. So we've spent, as an organization, 3 years looking at sourcing and engineering new data features that help that process, and then embedding those models into our collections processes. And so it's for us, it's not optional. It's one of the things that sets us apart from our traditional competitors.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. Any of the Prashants want to add to this?
No, I think Andrew summarized it well.
Yeah.
The answer is that it is not. It's not a choice anymore. I think it's you got to do something with the data that you're collecting, right? And with the advancements in AI and ML, we should be able to predict which borrower to talk to, which borrower is going to pay at what time, right? And what is the best method of reaching out to the borrower. I think all that information is right there within the data. We just need to apply the algorithms to pull that information. So yeah, it is absolutely, I think, vital we use these technologies.
Yeah.
Sure. This question is from Devdut. I think he's from Axion, and I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. So he says, what is your minimum expectation from the organization in terms of infrastructure? And I think he's talking about microfinance there.
Yeah, I think Prashant has already answered that. That's a good answer. So everything is on cloud. Whether you're using LeadSquared or Ozonetel, I think you just need internet, computer, phone. That's it. Yeah. And
with the new regulations coming in, even if phone is not needed, soft phones are allowed now.
Yeah.
So directly from the data center, agents can take calls on the computer also in India. Only thing I believe is the client needs to own the trunks in India. So if the client owns the trunks, they can connect into the data center, and even voice is on the computer. There's no need for a physical device anymore.
Yeah, just a little bit of money is required apart from this.
All right. So yes, I see we are slightly out of time. So maybe just because this session was on digitizing, I am going to put forward Gaurav's last question, which was digital self-service collections. Can that be the future game changer? Any comments?
Yeah. Andrew, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think probably the same answer to my previous question that Gaurav asked, and that is that we see a world of digital collections and self-service being part and parcel of the process to engage customers through that rehabilitation journey. Today's indebted borrower will be tomorrow's borrower, and so using digital tech and self-service, we think will be part and parcel of our journey in engaging with customers for the long term.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think we would concur. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, with that, we can conclude then. We are slightly out of time. So thank you so much for taking out time to do this for us. Prashant K, Andrew, and of course, Prashant sir, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thank you so much, Shibani, for
Pleasure.
organizing
Yeah.
it. Thank you so much.
And
Thank you
thanks
so
also
much.
to the Ozonetel team for organizing this. Everyone, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Bye.